Hi scholars, welcome back to Poetry Cafe. I'm Mrs. Bell and I'll be your instructor today. For the last Poetry Cafe, we talked about Harlem Renaissance poet Langston Hughes. So I'm very happy that you decided to come back and join me again for the second part in this lesson. Here are the goals for this lesson. Today, we're going to closely read a poem to determine the craft and structure of this poem. And in doing so, we get to examine how the author describes his ideas. And in doing that, we also will analyze how the author's word choice communicates his ideas and the tone. But before we do that, let's review. When we read this poem for the first time, I Too, we discussed that this poem was a clapback to Walt Whitman's poem, I Hear America Singing. And in Langston Hughes' poem, I Too, his clapback was stating how this poem was about his experiences of life in America that differed from Walt Whitman's experiences. So what was this poem mostly about? Why did Langston Hughes mention being sent to the kitchen to eat? Well, we know that because it was about his experiences, this poem detailed his experiences with racism, being isolated because of the color or the appearance of his skin. Again, we're doing a strategy called close reading, and we're looking at this poem through a different lens or a different pair of glasses. But today, for this lesson, we're looking at the craft and structure. The craft is how the author pens his words, the words he uses, from the individual words to the sentences, and the structure is how he builds upon those ideas or how he puts it all together. Let's look at some essential vocabulary for this lesson. The first term is word choice. Say it with me, word choice. We define word choice as the choice and use of precise words to express an author's meaning. So if the author is sad, does he use the word sad or does he use melancholy? What about if the author is happy? Does he say joyous or does he simply use the word happy? That's what we mean when we say word choice. Now I want you to state the definition of word choice in your own words. Did you say word choice was simply the words the author chooses? If you said that, you're right. Now let's look at one more term for this lesson. This is called tone. Say it with me, everyone, tone. We define tone as the feelings or attitude the narrator has about a subject. So is the author happy about what he's writing about? Or is the author expressing disdain or dislike for their subject? Now, in your own words, tell me, how do we define tone? Yes, simply put, tone are just feelings. So when you think about your feelings when you're writing, that's the tone. Now for this lesson, when we close read, we're going to use something called thinking notes. And thinking notes are just symbols that we use to help record our thinking. We do this because sometimes we read long, complex texts and we don't write down our thinking and we forget what we've read. And when it's time to answer questions, we have to go back and read and start all over. Who wants to do that? I know I don't. So that's why we use thinking notes. But you may have heard them as annotations or annotating notes. So that's what we're going to use today. And here are examples of thinking notes, which you'll also see here on the anchor chart behind me. When we look at thinking notes, we're going to keep our symbols very, very simple. We don't want to put a lot of time and energy into these notes or making the symbols. So when we find ideas and we come across them that are the main point or central to our author's message, we simply use a star. It's okay if you can't draw a perfect star. I mean, look at mine, but just do the best you can. When something is important or it's repeated, we use the exclamation point to recognize or symbolize that it is important. If you have a question about something or you're confused, I want you to use the question mark to mark that. Good readers ask questions. Sometimes the text causes them to ask questions, or sometimes they're just confused about what they read. But good readers always ask questions and identify when things are confusing. On the other hand, there may be something that's very clear and you can comment or elaborate on it. And we're going to symbolize that with a check mark. When we read, we want to make sure that we're interacting with the text. That's another habit of good readers. So if we agree to something that we're reading, we use the plus symbol. When we disagree, we use the minus sign. And we can make connections to the text that we're reading. And we simply use an arrow. This arrow will represent connections to ourself. Is something I read related to what I'm going through or what I've thought before? Is something connected to another text or maybe a song or a movie you've just watched or heard? And the last connection is a connection to the world. Am I reading something that's being on the news or in an article that I recently read? So we use those symbols to help us as we think. We're going to read our poem again. Remember, this is by Langston Hughes, and this is his clapback. This is the clapback describing his life about living in America. We're going to read this poem twice. For our first read, we just read through to remind ourselves of what we read in the first lesson, to get the gist back in our heads. I want you to read along with me. Are you ready? Let's read. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. Now, remind me from our first lesson, what was this poem mostly about? If you said that this poem was about someone being separated or sent to the kitchen because of the color of their skin, then you're correct. But now we're going to use our thinking notes to dig deeper into this poem. So we're going to now analyze this poem, and we're going to go line by line, stanza by stanza. So here we have line 1 where it says, I too sing America. I don't make any connections to that, so I'm not going to write anything, and I'm just going to go to line 2. It says, I am the darker brother. I'm going to use my arrow to make a connection. We know that when he says he's the darker brother, he's referring to his skin tone, and because he's black and I'm black, I connect to that. And line 3, he mentions, they send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. I want to know, why is he being sent to eat in the kitchen? So I'm going to label that with a question mark and write the word why. Let's look at line 5. It says, but I laugh well, and I laugh, and 6 says, and eat well. I don't agree with that. I'm going to label that with the minus sign. I wouldn't laugh if I was mistreated. And grow strong. Again, I have no connections, so I'm not going to put anything. And when you don't have a connection or have a thinking note for it, don't force it. Just move on to the next line. Line 8, he says, tomorrow. No connection there. But let's look at 9 and 10. I'll be at the table when company comes. I agree. I think he should be at the table when the company comes. Line 11 says, nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. I like that, but no connections there. So I'm going to go on to line 15. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I agree with line 16. You are beautiful. I agree that you want people to see your beauty. But line 17 makes me wonder, why would they be ashamed? So again, I'm going to label that with a question mark. And then my final line, line 18, I noticed looks exactly like line 1 up here. I see that it's almost the same word for word with one word difference. So that's going to be labeled an exclamation point because that's repeated. I'm also going to do the same for line 1. And because I know that that's important, I'm also going to make a star. You notice my star isn't beautiful. Your notes don't have to be beautiful as well. But this helps us organize our thinking. So now that we can answer some text-dependent questions about this poem. So let's look at these questions. What does I Too Sing America mean? Well, remember I told you a little backstory about Mr. Hughes. He was writing this poem in response to someone else's experiences in their poem about America. So I'm going to infer that he is saying that, like, you're singing America, I'm also singing America. But is he talking about singing in a literal sense? Think, why does Beyonce sing? Why does she write songs? She does it to express her feelings. So is he really talking about singing, or is he talking about expressing his feelings? I think he's talking about expressing his feelings too. So why does he refer to himself as a darker brother? Does he mention his brother anywhere in this poem? He doesn't. But we know that the word darker has the ER at the end, and that lets us know that he's comparing himself. Who is he comparing himself to? Let's look at that line. Look at line 2. He's comparing himself to his brother. But we notice that he's not mentioning his brother anywhere throughout this poem. So his brother wouldn't be a literal brother born of the same parents. Perhaps brother could mean the other people in America with him. Why does the author use the words that he uses to give his point of view? How do these words help us understand his point of view? Well, first we have to look at some words that stand out to us. Just shout at me really quickly. What are some words that you noticed that stands out to you? Keep them coming. Yes, I noticed that he laughs. He says he's going to eat well and grow strong. He uses words like tomorrow. So I'm thinking and inferring that although he's mentioning being mistreated, he has hope, he's laughing, he doesn't feel sad about it. So what problem do we notice at the beginning of this poem? Remember, go back to the poem to find your answer. Yes, he's being mistreated because he's a darker brother or because of the color of his skin. Let's look specifically at lines 8 through 10. I want you to point to them when you found them. Now, what do these 3 lines mean to our author? Well, we know that he was mistreated because of the color of his skin and he couldn't eat at the table with company. But these lines are a shift or a change in the poem. Instead of being mistreated, he says tomorrow he's going to be there. He's going to participate and be in front of company. So it's noticed or symbolizes a shift in the author's attitude and in the way he expects to be treated. But who sends the speaker to eat in the kitchen? We're talking a lot about this, but who is this person or these people? Well, if we know that it's because he's being sent because of the color of his skin, we know it's they. We look in the poem, but we have to uncover who is they. They would be the whites or anyone mistreating our speaker or Langston Hughes because of the color of his skin. And why would anyone do that? Think about the historical context that this poem was written in. If you said because racism was the norm and that's the way of the world at that time, then you're correct. But what solution does Langston Hughes give to those people who mistreat people due to racism? He says that he's going to be at the table. No more isolation for him. He's going to be present and everyone will see him. But what does Langston Hughes want these people to notice about him when he comes to the table? I'm going to give you a hint. Look at stanza 4. Did you say his beauty? Then you're correct if you said that. But is he talking about his literal beauty? Beauty or handsomeness for a male and beauty for a woman? No, he's not talking about his physical appearance. In fact, he's speaking of the opposite. He's complaining of mistreatment because of the way he looks. But in this case, beauty could be his intellect, his characteristics, or his skill. So why would people be ashamed? Why would they be ashamed for sending him to the kitchen? Yeah, they should be ashamed because they're judging someone based on the color of their skin. And we know that that's not a way that we would want to be treated or we would want to treat anyone. So Langston Hughes wants them to be aware of this misjudgment or this poor taste in character for the people who are sending him to eat in the kitchen. But let's look at that last line. In our thinking notes, we identified that as important because it was repeated and central to his main point or his message. So why does he refer to himself as America? What does that mean? Let me walk you through that just a little bit. Think about our country and its name. What is the full name of our country? Yes, we're the United States of America. So Langston Hughes is saying that although you're mistreating me, I am also united with you. I am America. If you just look at our name of our race, we're called African Americans. So he wants these people to know that despite my difference in appearance, that I too am united with you, that I also am your brother, or for us girls, your sister. So we've talked a lot about this poem and uncovered the hidden meaning behind it, but let's look closely at word choice. I've identified some words that just stood out to me because this poem was very heavy and talking about a subject that most of us shy away from. Langston Hughes uses some words that I didn't expect him to use. Here are these words and the lines that they come from. If you look at them, what tone does the author give us? Did you say hope? Yes. At the end of this poem, he took a hopeful or optimistic turn. So how do these terms or these words help communicate the author's tone and his mood? It helps communicate this because he could have used any other words to further drive home his point about racism and how unfair it is and the mistreatment that you can receive and how bad it makes you feel. But he instead chose to take a different direction and showing you that there is hope for the future, that because the way things are today don't have to be the way they are for the future. Now it's time to close our lesson. I know you don't want to go either, but we have to go. But we have one last activity as we wrap up our lesson. Remember, our purpose for reading was to uncover the author's craft and structure and the hidden meaning behind this poem. So we're going to do that with an activity called sentence expansion. And this activity just wraps up the main point of this poem, but it asks us some specific questions such as when and why. We put all of that together to create an expanded sentence. So let's look at that sentence. It says the speaker was sent to eat in the kitchen. I want you to tell me, when was he sent to eat in the kitchen? Did you say when company came? Yes. Now, why was he sent to eat in the kitchen? Those are some great answers. You're right. Now take all of that and put that together in an expanded sentence and shout it out at me. Those are some great answers. And here is a sample. Don't feel bad if you don't have exactly what I have. Remember, no two minds think alike. But here is just an example. He was sent to eat in the kitchen when company came because of his skin color. So if we put all of that together, we see when company came, the speaker was sent to eat in the kitchen because of the color of his skin, or because he was different from those around him. Oh, let's snap it up, scholars. Let's snap it up. You've done some great work today. Who knew that this poem would have so many hidden meanings? Who knew that we would talk about some deep, heavy, sometimes unpleasant things such as racism? But you did an excellent job uncovering that and analyzing this poem. Thank you for your hard work today. Give yourself some more snaps. I would like to thank Achieve the Core and Common Lit for making this poem accessible for us today. Thank you for joining me at the Poetry Cafe, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye.